Super Mario Maker 2 is a bit like the planet Earth. Right? Hear me out. Its biggest flaw is that its inherent quality is entirely reliant on the human beings who use it. And those same human beings are constantly polluting it. Some people litter in the ocean and run factories that emit huge amounts of greenhouse gases, and some people upload Auto Mario levels. But at the very least, between Mario Makers 1 and 2, quite a lot of steps seem to have been taken to increase the overall consistent quality of levels that are uploaded to the game and keep the pollution to a minimum, apart from that one. Please stop encouraging them. It seems like a lot of people have learned from the mistakes made in Mario Maker 1. There's a lot less silly gimmick levels like Auto Marios and other stuff like that. They still exist, but in general, it seems like people are more keen to make genuinely interesting and fun levels. So I guess that begs the question, what does constitute a good level? What makes a good Super Mario Maker 2 level? Well, good is incredibly subjective. Everyone has their own taste, and they absolutely have a right to their own opinions. So maybe it's easier to start by looking at the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, what's bad? Well, not a lot. Just pick a pipe, pick a door, leaps of faith, troll blocks, troll doors, looking for random question block tunnels, randomness, and Kamek. Just don't put Kamek in your level, okay? Subjectivity aside, all this stuff is just bad. Please don't do it. I think the first and most important thing to remember if you're trying to make a good Mario Maker level is that Mario is a platformer. A large majority of the things that people hate that they see in Mario Maker levels are things that are just not at all conducive to platforming. Funnily enough, I actually talked about this concept a lot in my last video, which you should go watch. But that's not to say that the only good Super Mario Maker levels are platforming levels, not at all. Super Mario Maker can absolutely pull off a good puzzle level. But guessing which pipe is the right one and guessing which door is the right one is not a puzzle, nor is falling through that pipe or going through that door and immediately dying fun or funny. It's just stupid and you're bad at Mario Maker. You'd think surely that something like this would just go without saying, but nah, you see so much of this stuff uploaded online, it's whatever. So making what is considered a good puzzle level is a bit of a hard one to explain. There's so many potential variables and factors that could constitute a puzzle, especially in a game like Mario Maker where you have so many options available to you. Really, I think you've just got to follow the fundamental rules of making a good puzzle in general. Don't hide the answer to the puzzle from the player in some kind of stupid abstract way, for example, having to find a hidden block. You know, jumping around and pushing A to find some random block isn't puzzle solving, that's jumping around and pushing A until eventually you win. Really, it's about finding that balance between intrigue and tedium. A lot of good puzzles give the player all the information they need to know what they need to do, but the puzzle is figuring out how they can do it. But again, puzzle levels are a hard one to explain. There's so many different ways that they can be done. Really, I think if you're smart enough to make a functioning puzzle in the first place, then you're probably smart enough to not go doing all the dumb stuff we discussed earlier. It's with platforming levels where things become a bit more concrete. Difficulty is a big sticking point for a lot of people when it comes to platforming levels. Personally, I really like a challenge. I like taking on the harder levels, making harder levels. I think there's a lot more room to be interesting with difficulty, but there's nothing wrong with liking the easier levels. I do think that there's a key component in making a good platforming level that is true for any level, regardless of difficulty. And this is something that I felt I really learned from watching a lot of streamers, if you can believe it. Being able to watch people play through and make levels live and hear their thought process as they playtest their own levels is extremely helpful. And the biggest commonality I've noticed in good platforming levels is people segmenting those levels and considering every part of the level to be a new platforming challenge. By doing things sequentially, you can build on concepts and challenges that you've already presented to the player in a far more natural way. And you can work on general aesthetics and how you transition between these challenges later. For the meantime, the first thing you should be doing in every level is just laying out the groundwork, the fundamental gameplay of the level. Literally just placing the platform challenges in the level, trying them out, seeing how they feel, and then get the other stuff done later. As a general rule, I feel like the best levels come when people don't build their levels around aesthetics, but when they build the aesthetics around the level. Here's a level I made to serve as an example for how not to make a level. It's called Brad's YouTube Analytics, and you can see here that it's just a straight line. If you're trying to become a better level designer, then I really think that watching the highest level of play and creation possible on Twitch is actually a really good move. Yes, a lot of these guys are speedrunners and Kaizo Mario players and Kaizo Mario designers, and they play at the highest level. But watching them play other people's levels and hearing their critique on them and hearing them talk about what they think is wrong with them or what they think is good about them, hearing them do the same thing for their own levels as they make them, I think the thought process is pretty universal in making a good level. Whether you're trying to make a level as hard, as complex as the ones they often make, or if you're trying to make something easier, I do think that their approach carries over. They're often making their levels one platform challenge at a time, and crucially, they're focusing on how they can make those platform challenges interesting. Here's another example I made of a much more interesting platforming level. This one's called You Did This. See, you've got to flip the switch to progress, but it's not just about jumping on the switch. You know, there's other things involved in the process of jumping on the switch. And then it says you did this in big coins. And then later on, this happens. That's interesting, isn't it? It's all well and good having focused platforming in your levels, but you do need to be thinking about how you can make your platforming challenges interesting. Jumping across 5 Goombas in a row is platforming, yes, but it's not interesting. The inputs for that are literally hold forward and press A at the right times. There are tons of ways that you can make this more interesting. Add some different enemies or obstacles to the area so that you have to be careful about your timing, or maybe change your angle. Maybe change the shape of the surrounding terrain so that you have to be more wary of your jump height. Whether you're trying to make an easy level or you're trying to make a hard level, I don't think you should be content with extremely simple platforming challenges that don't present the player with anything interesting. Just jumping off of stuff one after another in a straight line isn't that interesting. Try and make use of more of Mario's moveset, and maybe try and take advantage of the unique mechanics that are offered to you by the game style that you've made your level in. Finally, the last thing I want to touch on is pacing. Don't overload your level with too many different enemy types and too many different concepts. I personally think it's wise to have like 3 or so recurring enemies of the same type so that the player isn't constantly having to do new unintuitive things on the fly that you haven't really prepared them for. And try and keep your challenges somewhat thematically consistent. If there's a lot of wall jumping in your level, then great, but don't have the player do a whole bunch of wall jumping and then do like one long snake block section that has like nothing to do with the challenges that they've seen in the rest of the level. A lack of focus often makes things less interesting. Also, just because a level is a platforming level, that doesn't mean it has to be super fast the whole way through. There's a lot of merit to slower platforming levels with more precision jumping and meticulous movement. That stuff can be really fun and rewarding, but if that's the approach you're going for, then don't suddenly break the pace halfway through and have them going really fast all of a sudden, and vice versa. Don't have a really fast-paced, momentum-based platforming level where suddenly they have to stop halfway through to go super slow, or worse, solve a puzzle or something like that. So, there you have it. Those are the things that I think make a good Super Mario Maker 2 level. Again, it's reasonably subjective, but I think a lot of the things I've touched on are kind of generally agreed upon, and I'll reiterate that I think watching Twitch streamers play the game is actually really helpful and very enlightening in a lot of ways. I'll link the streams of a few of my favourite streamers in the description, as well as source all the footage that I've used from their YouTube channels in this video. And yeah, until next time, I'm going to leave you with one of my favourite levels that I've made. I think it's really great. I'll see you around. So this is Gary Goomba's Lucky Dip. Ah, unlucky again, eh, Gary? Yeah, no, he doesn't really get lucky too often, to be honest. Let's do it again. You know, the longer you stay on this video without clicking another one of my videos, the longer Gary suffers, the longer I continue to put him through this endless cycle of suffering. So, maybe you should do that, you know? And all I'm saying is, if maybe there was some liking or subscribing related actions going on, then I don't know, maybe Gary would appreciate that. Maybe that'd help his case a little bit. I'm just saying, I'm not saying Gary's fate lies in your hands, but I'm saying you could make things a lot easier for him. And if you don't do that, I think that's kind of messed up of you. Okay, no, you're leaving? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, no, very understandable.